The Odyssey was the first movie I have ever seen in IMAX 70mm, and it was worth every second. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I believe The Odyssey was the first movie completely filmed on IMAX film. Which gives you even more reason to go see it if you haven't seen it already. Christopher Nolan made this movie with the theatrical experience in mind, so I highly recommend going to experience The Odyssey in theaters. I know a lot of film bros and people really into film will tell you the only way to watch this movie is in IMAX 70mm. However, I have seen this movie in both IMAX 70mm and regular cinema screens from like your regular local theater or whatever. And I will say it is a much more breathtaking experience seeing an IMAX 70mm. Although, if you're the type of person who isn't that invested into the type of viewing experience and just want to see a fun movie, The Odyssey definitely still fills that need. Now, I'm going to dive into the actual movie itself and the story, so spoiler warning if you haven't seen The Odyssey. Again, spoiler warning. Let me first start with the acting performances. Everyone in this movie is giving a great performance. But a few standouts for me were Anne Hathaway and Matt Damon. Of course, we all expected both of them to deliver a great performance, but I was blown away by both of them. Specifically Anne Hathaway. Her acting as Penelope is phenomenal. You can just see in her face and some of the shots how much pain and agony she has been going through while Odysseus is gone. I absolutely loved the scene where it's toward the end of the movie and you have a conversation between Telemachus and Penelope. Telemachus is trying to tell his mother that it's time for her to move on and stop all this nonsense. But Penelope just snaps at Telemachus saying, "I want Odysseus!" To me, it's one of the greatest lines of the movie. I also mentioned Matt Damon, and I think he is also giving one of his best performances. His portrayal as Odysseus is spot on. I especially love the siren song scene when he gets tied up on the boat, and it cuts to the perspective of one of his men, and you're looking at Odysseus just screaming to be let out. That scene really stuck with me. I could go on and on about the acting, but that's not really why you want to go see The Odyssey, at least it wasn't for me. For most people, including myself, what drew me into The Odyssey was the story itself, and the fact that Christopher Nolan would be directing. Let me just say that Nolan delivered a masterpiece. The fact that they actually built the Trojan horse, and were actually sailing on those boats, and all of the practical effects, I was just so blown away. Now, I will say for the first 25 to 35 minutes of the movie are a tad slow, and I did find myself thinking, where is this all going? Of course, I have read The Odyssey, so I knew what was going to happen. I just felt like the setup for Odysseus' journey was a little long. But once the story gets going, it's all gas, no brakes. The Cyclops scene had me on the edge of my seat, and the sound effect when they defeat the Cyclops was just so interesting. I loved the way Nolan portrays Athena in this movie. When you are first introduced to Athena, you see her talking to Odysseus, guiding him through his journey. However, later you find out that Athena is making herself look like one of the women that did not survive the attack on Troy. I thought that was an amazing touch. It adds on rewatch when you listen to what Athena is saying to Odysseus, it makes it hit even harder. The last scene that I want to talk about is the scene in the end, after Odysseus has returned and is disguised as an old beggar. Of course, this is where we get the most iconic line of the movie, "Somebody get these beggars out of here," from Robert Pattinson's character. But what really pulled me in the most with that scene was when Odysseus is trying to string the bow, and he just can't quite do it at first. Everyone laughs at him for even trying. Then he strings it, and the whole vibe of the movie changes. The doors in the back of the room lock and someone says, "Odysseus has returned!" And that guy instantly gets shot with an arrow, and I assume he dies. And then an all-out brawl starts, with Odysseus shooting arrows at everyone. Odysseus even gets a few arrows shot at him and land in his back. I actually thought after my first viewing of this movie, Odysseus dies from all his wounds after his conversation with Penelope, but I later found out that he didn't actually die, so I was happy about that. Overall, this movie is worth seeing in theaters, and if you can try to see it in IMAX 70mm, it is absolutely worth it. In conclusion, Christopher Nolan gave us another phenomenal movie. What was your favorite scene of The Odyssey, and what do you think Christopher Nolan's next movie should be? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.